When Irish couple John and Michaela Makarevic traveled to Mauritius to celebrate their wedding, neither of them expected the honeymoon to turn into a nightmare. And in fact, one of them would never return home. The tragic events of his case were surrounded by corruption and a poorly conducted investigation. But who is really to blame for what happened? It's a case worth getting to know better. Mauritius is a charming East African island that looks like a tropical paradise. It is located near the coast of Africa and washed by the Indian Ocean, and also pleases residents and tourists with its beautiful weather. One of the many tourists in 2011 was 27-year-old Michaela Makarevic. Michaela Makarevic was born on December 31, 1983 to Marianne and Mickey Hart, a well-known family in their city. Mickey Hart was the manager of the rural Tyra soccer team in Hawaii in football. It is a type of Irish soccer consisting of 15 players on a team. It is very similar to rugby or NFL and differs only in the shape of the ball. This story takes place in 2011, though. Mickey would go on to manage the Tyre soccer team, but for a long 18 years. He is also known as the most successful top manager in the history of the country, so it's safe to say that he has done a pretty great job. As for Michaela herself, she attended the University of Malaysia and graduated with a bachelor's degree in education. Since her father invested so much in sports, it was no surprise that soccer became the dominant theme in the family. Mickey lived and breathed soccer. Indeed, sometime later, Michaela married John Makarevic. John was an accountant, soccer player, and captain of his club. They seemed a very suitable couple. Their relationship history could be considered perfect. They met at one of the contests in which Michaela participated, namely in an Irish beauty contest, which evaluated not only the appearance of the contestants, but also their diplomatic skills. And Michaela then made it to the finals. Eventually, the relationship between them became very serious, and on December 30, 2010, just one day before her 20th birthday, John and Michaela were officially married in a small church in Taiwan. It was clear to see that the couple loved each other deeply, and friends described the bond as unimaginably strong, and from the outside, they seemed like a very statuesque couple. Both had achieved great success in life, were young and beautiful. Like most newlyweds, John and Michaela wanted to spend their honeymoon in a magical place, and not surprisingly, they chose Mauritius with its warm weather and idyllic scenery. In fact, Mauritius was a very popular vacation destination among the Irish, and the hotel they stayed in did. Gin was in particular demand from the get-go. Everything said that their honeymoon was going to go truly beautifully. The hotel was located in the northern part of Mauritius and was a luxurious 5-star resort hotel with a swimming pool overlooking the Indian Ocean, and all around it were cliffs, forests, and beaches. Inside, the hotel was just as stunning as the views around it, and not many people would turn down a vacation like this. The newlyweds landed in Mauritius on January 8, 2011, and immediately went to their luxurious hotel. Upon arrival, John tested his dacha by asking the concierge for a better room, and to his surprise, the hotel provided him and his wife with a superior room closer to the restaurant and beach. January 9th, 2011. Security cameras captured the two of them signing up for a couple of spa treatments. Both Michaela and John were ready to enjoy a vacation together, celebrating their love and commitment for life. However, even in their worst dreams, neither of them would have ever imagined that this supposed life would only last another 24 hours. January 10, 2011 was a truly hot day in Mauritius. The thermometer showed 39 degrees Celsius heat. Michaela and John were celebrating the third day of their honeymoon. John was given a complimentary golf roll as part of the hotel package, and while he was at the course, Michaela waited for him by the pool. The newlyweds met around noon and went to one of the resort's restaurants called Andrew's Bar for lunch. Finishing their meal, they decided to have tea and discuss plans for the rest of the day. But like most people, the couple preferred to have tea with dessert. Just in time, they remembered the box of chocolates they had received as a gift. So, the restaurant was not far from their room. Michaela decided to go back and bring him a treat. Minutes went by, and John started to get nervous. Michaela was supposed to be back pretty quickly, and she had said she wouldn't linger. But time passed, and the girl still hadn't shown up. John realized that something was wrong, and after taking the receipt, he went to their room. He quickly got to their room and knocked on the door. But there was no answer. John could clearly hear the sound of running water outside the door, but no more sound came from the room. The man could not enter the room by himself. His keys and phone had been left by the pool, and that made things very difficult. John headed to the front desk to get a spare key, and a staff member decided to escort him out. When he was back at his room, he unlocked the door and heard the sound of the water becoming more distinct. And as he made his way to the bathroom, he was confronted with the most horrifying picture of his life. He found his wife dead in the bathtub. Everything that happened next was very confusing and hampered the investigation for a long time. It took police officers more than half an hour to arrive on the scene and another hour to unhook the crime scene. During that time, dozens of people went in and out of the hotel room, including staff, doctors, and even random guests passing by. Despite all these police mistakes, they made another most serious one. They moved Michaela's body from the bathroom to the hallway. Although John was initially considered a suspect, he was eventually ruled out. But over the next 24 hours, 3 others were found. They turned out to be hotel employees. Why did they become suspects? We'll talk about that later. But for now, we will talk about other people who played an important role. After months of gathering evidence, the police have been able to piece together what happened to Michaela. It is believed that at 2:42 p.m., someone with access entered through the front door. This was proven through a key card surveillance program, which revealed that a magnetic card meant for the head of room service was in the room. It was at this time that investigators hypothesized that the perpetrator wanted to steal anything he could get his hands on from the room. And that theory was proven by fingerprints found on the door and on the safe. To the thief's surprise, Michaela entered the room just 2 minutes later at 2:44 p.m., and probably the girl scared the thief, and he tried to escape. The logical assumption was that the killer was either a janitor or a security guard, because at that time, only they could be in the room. And for a long time, everyone believed that story. So the killer or killers decided to hide in the bathroom, hoping that the girl would not go in there. But unfortunately, Michaela still decided to do it. When she entered the bathroom, the criminal changed tactics and chose his way of escape through attacking Michaela, wanting to disarm her. The perp strangled the girl. Most likely, in a panic, the criminal thought of nothing better than to put the body of the girl in the bathtub and turn on the water, believing that it could pass for drowning due to an accidental fall. And at 3:26 p.m., John entered the hotel room and found the breathless body of his wife. Among those initially suspected of the crime were 3: a 32-year-old janitor working at the hotel, his 42-year-old supervisor, who was 33 at the time, who was also a janitor at the resort. A detailed examination of the key card revealed that all 3 men had used them to gain illegal access to the guest rooms for the sake of theft. And when word got out about Michaela's death, it brought even more suspicion on them. Thus, they were charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. At first, the case seemed relatively easy, and one of the janitors even confessed to everything the next day. However, this confession was later withdrawn for a variety of reasons and inconsistencies. This was just the beginning of a long and convoluted investigation. A week after Michaela's death, 2 more suspects were arrested on similar charges of aiding and abetting a crime, and lawsuits joined the case. One of them worked as a security guard at the hotel, and his son worked there as his assistant. The security guard's DNA was found on the hotel room's safe door. However, those who were at the scene before it was cordoned off were able to confirm that the son had entered the room to offer assistance to his father after the initial discovery of Michaela's body. Therefore, the presence of his DNA was no longer sufficient to confirm or deny his involvement in the murder itself. The security guard's son was also thought to be just as involved, as investigators initially believed that it was his card that was actually used to enter the rooms. It was also believed that he may have been part of an organized group of thieves working together to access the hotel rooms, steal from guests, deflect suspicion, and split the profits in half. Without any sufficient evidence, investigators were forced to drop all murder charges that were initially laid against the father and son. It took 16 months for the two remaining suspects to appear in court. In an interview, Michaela's family said they were grateful for the media's support and that this trial would be difficult for all of them, but that they would not make any statements until the trial was fully completed. During the trial, the Serious Crime Unit was heavily criticized for its handling of the case. It emerged that although the accused had confessed to Michaela's murder, he had only done so after he had been beaten by police for 3 long days. DNA tests conducted by forensic experts concluded that there was no trace of the 4 men's DNA on the body or the crime scene. DNA from the security guard's son was found, but it was easy to determine that his fingerprints had been left after John had found Michaela. Since there was no physical evidence of the men's guilt, no charges could be brought against them. However, the defense tried to create as many wild theories as possible. One of them was a recording that was leaked to the media the day before the trial. It allegedly showed Michaela and John arguing, and the recording could have taken the case in a new direction. But it later emerged that the recording was made 15 minutes after the girl's death and was a red herring. The Assistant Commissioner of Police confirmed that the video showed 2 separate guests from Germany, and therefore the video was ultimately rejected by the court. The defense will try to blame John for his wife's death to the last, despite the fact that it made no sense and was not supported by evidence. CCTV and witnesses could have proven his innocence. The defense also insulted Michaela's name in court, accusing the girl of a failed sexual encounter with a stranger in the hotel room. In the end, the main responsibility fell on the 2 security guards, a father and son, who, in fact, were in the room after Michaela's death. The investigation of this case had a very strong impact on the entire island, as in all countries that depended on tourism. Mauritius was filled with fear and anxiety because of such an incident. All vacationers want to feel safe while on vacation, and the fact that the killer was never found made them very worried. And the anxiety of the tourist, in turn, made the hotel staff work harder to earn their trust, and even the president called for the reinstatement of the death penalty. The defense was also opposed by some very important figures. Therefore, they had to use very harsh tactics in their interests. They criticized the corrupt police of Mauritius, and further claimed that they chose 2 poor workers as scapegoats in order to rid the country of unsolved murders. Unfortunately, there is some truth to these allegations. The Mauritian police are often criticized for extracting confessions from potential suspects, so it is possible that the father and son were victims of police incompetence. The police also failed to carry out basic checks. They failed to quickly assess and remove the crime scene, failed to lift fingerprints from the allegedly stolen wallet, and failed to even find DNA at the crime scene. The tension in the courtroom peaked over the guard's admission of guilt, as there was no DNA or concrete evidence available, and only his own written confession was probably the most compelling evidence. And even this confession cannot be considered 100% reliable. Given the Mauritian police's reputation for brutality, it was unclear whether it was truthful or coerced. The case was originally scheduled to be concluded within 2 weeks. In reality, it took the jury almost 2 months to reach a verdict. However, after only 10 hours of deliberation, all parties in the case were acquitted. John and Michaela's family were left very disappointed. Also, after this trial, the laws of the country were changed. Now, suspects can be prosecuted for the same crime twice. These changes in the law were a direct result of Michaela's case, and so it is clear that both the authorities and the government were unhappy with the jury's verdict. In court, John made an emotional statement, saying that no matter what, he will always fight for justice for his wife, even if it takes him 20 years. However, unfortunately, months have passed without results and will eventually turn into years, and to this day, no one has been found guilty. However, it cannot be said that at least some progress has not been made during this time. After repeated calls to reopen the Michaela trial, the case has been reopened and closed several times. The most recent investigations began in 2012 and are still ongoing. Unfortunately, when it seemed the case was making progress, one of the witnesses allegedly committed suicide. He was found hanged outside his home. But many believe that this could have been another crime, especially since he was the only key witness in the case, which is once again gaining momentum. Even now, the police are still actively investigating his case. In March 2012, one of the suspects, who was one of the 5 original suspects, was rearrested on new charges of conspiracy to commit theft. On the day that Michaela was murdered, the key to the security room was used to gain access to her room, just 2 minutes before she was killed. And rather suspiciously, all charges against the suspects were then suddenly dropped. What makes the situation even stranger is that he was never even used as a witness in court. The guy himself was also arrested in 2022 on new charges of stealing a magnetic key card. Given these new charges, it is safe to say that both men were almost certainly part of an underground theft operation at the hotel at the time of Michaela's death. If Michaela did indeed stumble across these 2 men on that fateful day, then a lot of things about the case become clear. But will there really be a breakthrough, and will Michaela ever get the justice she deserves? It remains to be seen. The fact is that over 10 years later, no one has been held accountable for this horrific crime, and that only adds to the grief and pain that Michaela's family is feeling. Michael's funeral was eventually held in the same church where she had been married 3 weeks earlier, and the hall that had recently been filled with joy and happiness was now filled with pain, confusion, and sadness. Her father said at the funeral that he loved his daughter madly, and that the whole family would miss her, and that they would all remember her as she was on her wedding day, as radiant and beautiful as she had been throughout her life. After Michaela's murder, the hotel even changed its name. In an attempt to distance themselves from the horrific crime that took place there, they also renamed the room in which Michaela was killed. Although the hotel would probably have to close that room forever,